You ever witness a moment so cold-blooded it just cracks the air in half, like you can actually hear the silence around it? That's exactly what happened the day my life got handed off like lost luggage at Boston's South Station. Me father in his $1,000 suit, my wheelchair shining like an exclamation point nobody wanted to read, and not a single person looking our way until a little girl asked out loud, "Daddy, doesn't she have any family?" Funny how a stranger's question can blast through walls you thought were permanent. You know what I mean? We pulled up in this fancy black Mercedes, the leather seats still warm from the drive, and my dad, let's call him Alistair, was deep into another high-stakes business call, rattling off numbers and merger deadlines like he wasn't about to drop his only child at a bus terminal with a one-way ticket to nowhere I ever picked for myself. I just sat there, perfectly still, watching everyone hustle through the station, every single one of them headed somewhere by choice. It struck me then, not for the first time, how badly I missed the simple act of choosing for myself where to go, who to be, when to say yes or no. 3 years earlier, on my 20th birthday, my life had blown apart in an accident that didn't just break my back, it shattered whatever thread still tied me to my father. Since then, I'd become less his daughter and more his inconvenient problem. He scheduled my care like he scheduled board meetings, handled my disability like he handled his company's logistics, always by the numbers, always at arm's length. I remember the exact moment he stopped looking at me like family and started seeing me as a corporate liability. A board meeting, 18 months after the accident, when I interrupted his flow and saw his face shudder, just for a second before he smoothed it out again. Yeah, that happened. That day at the station, he kept talking as Marcus, our driver, unloaded my luggage. "Your trust fund is still active," he said, not quite meeting my eye, "and your monthly allowance will be monitored by Dr. Williams." He pressed a debit card into my hand. "PIN is your birth month and year. Remember, larger purchases require facility approval." The irony, of course, was that he was giving me just enough to survive, never enough to change my situation. Classic Alistair, right? Solve the problem, avoid the emotion. Inside, the terminal was a study in contrast: fluorescent lights, tired travelers, families arguing, students laughing, real life happening all around. Alistair leaned on the counter, rattling off my special needs to the agent like he was booking a package to be shipped, not a person to be heard. Before the accident, I was at Harvard studying art history, dreaming of museums and curation, of making something beautiful out of the world. Now, all those dreams felt farther away than my ability to walk. The accommodation in Albany was the polite name for the facility he'd found, a place for people like me to disappear while the rest of the world moved on. He handed over an envelope with my ticket and ID, everything planned to the last detail. "Your bus departs at 3:15. Someone will meet you at the Albany terminal." Everything managed. Everything decided without me. You ever feel like cargo in your own life? His phone rang again, some Peterson crisis, and he answered before I could say anything. By the time I opened the envelope and saw that one-way ticket, he was already back in business mode, barely glancing my way. At the gate, he handed me off to the Greyhound staff with practiced efficiency. Patricia, the gate supervisor, looked at me with real kindness for the first time that day. "We'll take good care of you, honey," she said, and I wanted to believe her. Alistair, meanwhile, was out the door, already half gone. He bent, kissed my forehead with the same formality he might show a colleague, and told me to maintain realistic expectations. Translation: get used to this. And then, just like that, he disappeared into the crowd. But then, right as my bus was supposed to board, the universe threw a wrench in the works. A crackly announcement over the loudspeaker. The 3:15 to Albany was canceled. Mechanical failure. The next bus? Not until morning. I should have been frustrated, right? But I felt this weird, guilty surge of relief. For once, the schedule didn't control me. For once, nobody could just handle me. Patricia got me a hotel voucher and offered help with rebooking, and I found myself alone in the waiting area, watching the world go by, phone buzzing with calls I ignored, especially from Rebecca, my father's assistant. That's when I noticed the single dad wrangling his daughter across the aisle, Liam and little Maya. She was drawing flowers in a coloring book, completely absorbed, while Liam juggled logistics and soft-voiced negotiations over the phone. When Maya spotted me watching, she waved, and I surprised myself by waving back. Soon enough, Maya started in with the questions, the way kids die, straightforward, honest, no filter. "Daddy, why does that lady use a special chair?" Liam explained, gently, that some people use wheelchairs just like others wear glasses. No drama, no weirdness, just facts. Maya nodded, satisfied, and went back to her drawing. That moment stuck with me, because it was the first time in a long while that my difference wasn't a spectacle or a burden, it was just another fact of life. Later, as Patricia helped us board the hotel shuttle, Maya invited me to breakfast the next morning. "Maybe you can tell me more about paintings," she said, waving her crayon-stained hand like we were old friends. Liam, cautious and responsible, checked in with me about dinner plans. "I need to be careful with Maya, but if you want company, you're welcome to join us." I could see the calculation in his eyes, protective, but not judging. I admitted, maybe a little too quickly, that I was alone, that my family wasn't exactly waiting on the other end of this trip. Over dinner, the three of us talked art, flowers, old paintings, Maya with her wild curiosity, Liam with his thoughtful questions. At some point, Maya asked the question adults always tiptoe around, "Are you sad about going to that place?" I didn't dodge. "Yes," I said, "I'm sad about going somewhere that isn't my choice." She looked at me, dead serious, and said, "But you could remember you can choose something else, right?" Out of the mouths of babes. After dinner, Liam confided that he and Maya were rebuilding their lives after losing her mother. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help," he told me, "and take one small step toward what you actually want, even if you don't know the rest yet." His kindness hit me hard because nobody in my world had offered help without strings for a long time. That night, alone in my hotel room, I laid out Maya's drawings and just stared at them. One, in particular, showed a woman in a wheelchair teaching kids about art. "Teacher Sarah," she'd written. That was how she saw men as a problem, but as a teacher, someone who mattered. It made me wonder if I could see myself that way, too. By sunrise, I made my decision I wasn't getting on that bus. I'd call Dr. Williams, cancel my place at the facility, use what little money I had to find a disability rights lawyer, and start fighting for my own say in my life. When Maya asked at breakfast if I was ready for Albany, I told her the truth. I was staying in Boston, ready to fight for a life I wanted. She grinned and told me, "Teachers should get to choose where they teach." Out of the mouths of babes again. Liam handed me a sheet of contacts, advocacy groups, lawyers, resources, and reminded me, even teachers need help sometimes. As they headed off to Denver, I watched them go and realized less than 3 days ago I was cargo, just a passenger in my own story. Now I was finally the author, however uncertain the next page might be. So, you tell me, how would you do? When the world tries to write your ending for you, do you go along quietly, or do you start scribbling your own story, even if your hand's shaking the whole time? I'd love to hear how you'd fight for your own choices, your own definition of justice, when everyone around you thinks they know best. Drop your thoughts below, because this isn't just my story. It's one a lot of us are living, one hard choice at a time.